Carlos Ramirez, owner of NVS Audio in Roselle, New Jersey. So we have I won't call it a wiring rescue, we'll call it a rewire and a system rescue. The wiring is super duper neat, but there was a bunch of mistakes made and the bike's not as loud as it should be. I'm not going to post a picture of the bike because I'm actually friendly with the shop that did the build. They used aluminum wire, they didn't use oxygen-free copper. The impedance on all the amplifiers was wrong, so we're not getting the output that we need. It's partially the client's fault for supplying the wrong equipment, but it's also the shop's fault for not making them aware of it. We have a 1600.1 1 ohm running two 8-inch mid-bass drivers. So two 8-inch mid-bass drivers in parallel will net you a 4 ohm load. The 1600.1 comes in a 4 ohm version, which would give you 800 watts for each driver. They use the 1 ohm version, which nets you 200 watts to each driver. So the 10s have completely no output. Then they use a 1200.1 1 ohm to run four mids. So we have 6.5 mids in the front and 8-inch mids in the lid ran in parallel. So now you can't tune it because if you tune to the 8s, you distort the 6s. And if you tune to the 6s, the 8s don't get enough power. Then they use an 800.4 on the horns, which is way too much power, but that could be addressed inside the DSP. The wire that was used was all aluminum, and this system is over 3,000 watts RMS, needs a lithium, and didn't have one. So we're gonna remove the factory battery, we're gonna remove the battery in the torque pack, we're gonna go with a lithium under the seat, which is gonna carry us 4,000 or 5,000 watts RMS, no problem. We're gonna do a 3,000.1 on the 210s. We're gonna do, I'm not sure how we're gonna reconfigure the other amplifiers, but we're gonna make sure the 8s get minimum of 400 to 500 watts each. We're gonna make sure the 6s get 200 to 300 watts each, and get this thing tuned up, get it to sound good. So this is a 1600.1, and it's only running 8 gauge power wire, and it's aluminum. So with the current draw of this amplifier, 8 gauge aluminum is just not going to carry enough current for this amplifier to do full power. So we're going to have to replace that. They made the same mistake on this side with the 1200. So 8 gauge aluminum, 1200. Now the 800, they actually use the 8 gauge, which is the appropriate power wire to use for the 800. But why would you use the same power for an 800 as a 1200 as a 1600? Obviously the 800 draws less current, so if you use an 8 gauge here, you should double it up here because this is literally double the amount of power. So if you know you need 8 gauge to get 800 watts, what you need 4 gauge to get 1600 watts, just simple math. The amps are not individually fused, so there's one fuse on the entire bike, and that's near the battery. So there is no protection between the power wire and the amplifiers. So we're going to replace that with a 4-way distribution block. So we're going to do 0 gauge in, and then we're going to do 4 gauge runs out with a fuse on each one. This is the fuse block we'll be using. So it gives us 4 fuses, 1 for each amp. All this power on this bike, and we're still running a stock battery. So as I was moving the harnesses around, the audio was cutting in and out. So this is what I suspect is the problem. I have a feeling we have a loose wire inside the fuse holder. So I'm just gonna wiggle and yank a little bit. Hey, look at that. This is exactly why we crimp and solder all our connectors and use wire ferrules. That pulled right out. Take that apart, see if that side falls out. That one's in there pretty good. All right. And we have a 200 amp, 50 amp fuse running the entire system. That wire is aluminum, not copper. So 1 aluminum wire running 3 amplifiers. all aluminum wire. All right, so we got 2 rolls of Stinger 0 gauge. Getting ready to rewire this thing. So as we get deeper into this bike, we realized that the customer originally had 2 1200.1s, and when he wasn't getting the bass that he wanted, they convinced him to take out the 1201 and upgrade to a 1600.1. Well, that upgrade was actually a downgrade because it's 2 8-ohm 10-inch woofers, so it's a 4-ohm load. So the 1200.1 he had, since it was a 2-ohm version, it would give him, let's see, it would give him 300 watts to each side. So they upgraded to the 1600.1, but it's a 1-ohm version, so it only gives him 200 watts to each side. So we actually lost power by going with the bigger amplifier. You have to pay attention to the impedance that the amplifier wants to make full power. That is a 1600.1 1-ohm, which means you would have to have 2 2-ohm woofers in parallel to get max power out of this amp. This was the 1200.1, 2 ohms. So with a 4-ohm load, it gives you 1200 watts, which would be 600 watts per side. With a 4-ohm load, which is what we have here, it would give you 300 watts per side, which is still 100 watts per side more than the upgrade. So you got to make sure you get the impedances right. So we're not going to be using either one of these. We're going to take the 1600.1 out, and we're actually put the 1200.1 in because we're going to use it to run the 2 8s. So it'll give me 300 watts across each mid-bass driver 8, and we're going to use the other one to give me 300 watts across each 6.5. And then we'll use the 3000.1, and that'll give us 750 watts across each 10. So it's going to be almost 4 times the amount of power he was running before. Lithium battery, so he's not going to have any current issues. And that's it. Just got to pay attention to the impedance and you can get these bikes to sound right. Okay, so now we have Stinger, oxygen-free copper, 4 gauge going to the 1200.1. Stinger, oxygen-free copper 4 gauge going to the other 1200.1.